Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. Each week, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from women entrepreneurs who transformed their prestige prisons into daring entrepreneurial success stories. Now, here is your host, Lulu Nins.
Welcome to She Rebel Radio, episode 27, Dial Up Intuition, Dial Down Instinct. It is Rebel Friday. My name is Lulu Mins, advocate and coach for women leaving prestigious positions and starting their businesses of significance. Well, starting, launching, growing, evolving their business of significance. And for the last few solo shows of She Rebel Radio, which comes to you every single Friday, we have been talking about, firstly, why we shouldn't retain women in prestigious positions. Secondly, when you should leave your prestigious position and what to expect. And today I'm going to be talking to you about why when you leave your prestigious position, your instinct is likely to dial right on up, when in fact, you need to be dialing your instinct down and instead dialing up your intuition. And this is such a crossover of instinct and intuition that we're going to really dive into the detail and unpick this in this episode today. So hold on tight. This is going to be a really interesting episode for you. I'm going to highlight the differences between intuition and instinct. I'm going to share with you how you can identify which it is that you are leading from and the different outcomes that you can expect when you either lead from intuition, which you want to be dialing right on up, or when you're leading from instinct, which you want to dial right down when you are launching, starting, growing, evolving your business of significance. Now, if you've followed me for some time, if you've listened to previous episodes of She Rebel Radio, I would definitely recommend that you tune in with episode 23 and 25, which I've just introduced to you. But you may be in the She Rebel Club community and have watched my videos. I do a Training Tuesday there every week. You may have worked with me. You might have come to a workshop or a retreat. You may have heard me say before that so often what I see is when you are starting that business of significance and moving away from your position of prestige, you begin to act from a past version of yourself. You're not even acting from the current version of yourself. You start to act from a past version of yourself when what you actually need to do is act from the future version of yourself. Whenever you're trying to move forward in your business of significance, you need to be always acting from the next version of you. But so many of you, and I say this with much love and compassion because I was exactly the same, I started to, instead of evolve, to devolve and dial back into my instincts, which was not a good place to be. And that is why I'm really excited to share this episode with you, because there's such, a refinement that we need to dive into here so you can really understand the differences between intuition and instinct. And I'm going to explain that. So stay tuned for this episode. A little keynote for you to dive into right now is your instinct is connected to your external situation, to external stimuli. It's a response to that. So you can see when you leave that prestigious position or you start to leave and you've made that decision and that's going to happen in the next year, or you've done it already, your response to your external stimuli of not having the stability of your income and a salary and all the things that come with that is you hit default and you go into instinct, animal primitive mode, and start to act from that space, which often is very fear-based. when actually what you want to be doing is dialing up that intuition, which is much more of an internal movement. That intuition that's been knocking and nudging at you potentially to leave that position in the first place. So let me explain the differences to you here. And I will explain things in a context of life, maybe relationships, and it's totally not business related. But what I want you to always be doing is connect it to your business. I tell the different stories to illustrate a point, okay, for you to understand that point, because it really does well to, explain that. So firstly, I'm going to tell you a story about instincts. When my instincts really, really kicked in on a very animal and primitive basis, and why that wouldn't be such a good thing in your business. And this was when I was a criminal defence lawyer. Bear in mind, as a criminal defence lawyer, I was around criminals 24/7. Okay, that was my daily encounter was with people that, general society, family, friends, loved ones, etc., would consider as unpleasant or dangerous, etc. And that wasn't really my daily experience. Okay. So I was sitting in the police station though, on one particular evening, waiting to deal with a client. It was a police station I wasn't at so often, but actually where I'm from originally. And I was chatting away. We were in the holding room for the solicitors, for the appropriate adults that come down and, act alongside the lawyers for children or people with mental health, learning difficulties, etc. So there were quite a few of us. There were about 5 of us in this little holding room, and we could see out into the custody suite where the prisoners are coming in and out and being booked in. And, this is daily activity for me. This was totally normal. If you were new to that experience, then, your instincts might be dialed right up, but mine were dialed right down. I was totally relaxed. I was thinking about when I was that's a little bit instinctual, of when I was going to get my next meal. Are the police going to be ready soon? The usual. Am I going to be here for hours, not getting paid properly? All of that kind of stuff. And I was chatting to an appropriate adult who was there, and he was a part-time fireman as well. And my brother-in-law is a fireman. So we were chatting about, being in the fire brigade, etc. here in the UK. And the police brought out one of the prisoners to the booking, booking him in. I think he'd already been booked in actually, or fingerprints or whatever, but he walked along the custody suite. And I was facing out. My body, every hair on my body went right up on end. And I felt this need to move quickly, to get out of the way. And I got that kind of shudder and judder all over me. And I kind of sort of went, oh God, I wonder what he's in for. And the appropriate adult turned around, looked around, he went, oh, that's mine. That's my client. That's who I'm here for. And he went on to explain to me that this chap was there for extremely serious sexual violence against women, and stranger danger, which again is actually quite rare, So he didn't even need to tell me that. My instinct told me everything I needed to know, that I needed to move and get out of the way, and I did not want to be in the line of vision of that particular person, and I was in danger. The reality of my situation at that point, I think I was the only woman in the room. The reality of my situation at that point was I wasn't in any danger. I was surrounded by police, custody assistants. There were like 4 or 5 men sitting in the room with me. But my body, everything of my instinct told me to take flight, to remove myself. And that is instinct, my friends. It is so powerful. And I only had that twice in my career. 11 years I had twice. And actually, both of those times they were meant for those types of offences in terms of stranger danger, right? Which, as I said, is pretty rare. But I knew when I came across those types of prisoners that I was potentially at risk, even though my external situation at that time was that I was, in a degree of protection because of what I was surrounded with. Instinct is powerful. Do you want to lead your business from that space? Absolutely not. Because a little hint of that is that whilst your instincts are saying, take flight, I am in danger, your cultural reality might be that that is not actually the case. You're perfectly safe. An instinct is a fixed pattern of behaviour in animals, which we are animals, in response to certain stimuli, and that is external stimuli. So I had seen someone and something and I was responding, but that response, I didn't act on it, but that response was not my cultural situation. As I said, I was safe. So really have a think about this in terms of your business. But I'm going to ask you to pause that point for a moment so I can illustrate the next point and how intuition is very different from that, because they are used as two intermittent terms when actually they're totally different. And there is much more to be understood about intuition. Daily in my work as a criminal defence lawyer, I use my intuition. I use it frequently as a coach as well. It's a big part of my gift. I encourage and work with my clients in terms of building their relationship and trust with their intuition as well. But this summer, my yoga had massively slowed down. And I went on a bit of a kind of like health kick in the summer, get my energy up, and I had some HIIT workouts and I was doing some more dynamic yoga because I'd really got into my yin yoga, which is the feminine yoga, which is super relaxed and amazing and meditative and beautiful, but not so good for like getting energy up and, you know, getting fitter and stuff. And so I'd gone to like a dynamic yoga class, which wasn't in a hot room. And I was doing these HIIT workouts. And on the Wednesday, I woke up and I was like, no, I don't want to do anything today. And I had this really clear message. Just as I was lying in bed, don't do it today. Do not do it today. And I overruled because I'd made a commitment. I'd made an intrepid commitment to really committing to my fitness, you know, over the summer period. And I pushed through and I went downstairs and I did the HIIT warm up. My body was just, no. So I did listen. I just did some very gentle yoga. That was that. Later on, I went out for dinner that evening and I was walking along the beach near where I live and my foot started to hurt. And by the time I got to the restaurant, it was very red and very sore. I couldn't walk home again. I had to get a taxi and I wasn't that far away. And a few weeks later, what happened, after I'd gone to the doctor, been x-rayed, I had a stress fracture or a hairline fracture, which is a gradual fracture, a gradual pulling away. It's not something that, you know, you just fall down the stairs, etc. So my intuition was telling me, without any conscious reasoning whatsoever, don't exercise today. My body knew, without any rational reasoning, why I shouldn't, and it came as a very quiet and clear message, which I, against my better judgment, because I am massive in dialing up my intuition and following and leading from that space, I overruled it. And then I had a stress fracture, which has taken almost 4 months to fully recover. I'm still not fully recovered from that. And that may not have happened had I not overruled my intuition. This is so important. Let's tune in with the difference there. Intuition, internal movement. It's without conscious reasoning. It's just a knowing. When I looked that up in the dictionary, it said an understanding instinctively without conscious reasoning. I think it's way beyond instinct. It's totally different to instinct. And intuition is something that we don't fully understand. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about that today. Again, tune in with that in terms of your business and what that looks like, because we've got the instinct, response to external stimuli. I've left my job, I'm leaving my job. Fear and lack and scarcity kicks in. It's primal, it's fear-based, it's survival mode, it's safety and security, it's taking fight or flight, and it is so often out of whack culturally with where we are or what we're facing. Family are very good to our loved ones, partners, etc. Very good to triggering that fight or flight response. Think of the amount of times you wanted to remove yourself from a situation, just not talk to someone, or you're like geared up to bring it on and you've almost got no control over it. And, whether you're leaving your job, whether the reality really is, and I remember having the conversation with myself, if things really didn't work out, was the reality really that I was going to be homeless and not have any food on the table? It actually wasn't. That wasn't my cultural reality. So, it's really not a great place to lead from. In addition to which, but we can see why we're triggered when we move away from what it is that we know, our jobs, safety, security, salaries, etc., bonuses, and all of that jazz. And as women, we have different instincts as well. I'm always about the viva la difference. Let's look at the difference of men and women, of the feminine, of the masculine. And as women, and one of the amazing women in the She Rebel Club community, because this was one of the first things I shared at the beginning of 2020 that you need to be doing is dialing up intuition, dialing down instinct, quite rightly pointed out that instinct is not always fear-based. Sometimes it's love-based in terms of being around children and all of that. And actually that was a great point. So big love to you, Sylvie, giving you a shout out for sharing that. That's great. But again, you still don't want to build your business from that space, because as women, instinctively will and not all women, we're all wired differently, but have that wiring to nurturing, to caring for others above and beyond their business potentially. It can be amazing. It can be part of your business, but also people pleasing men in particular, because instinctively we used to need their protection because we were smaller than they were and weaker and at risk if we were not part of a tribe where hunters were going out and bringing stuff back and we were not protected. So we would people please in order to ensure that we were protected within that tribe. Again, how is that affecting you in your business if you're leading from that space of the fear, the lack and scarcity because you're giving up the job, or the people pleasing, the being unable to say no? It is massive. We did a challenge of that in the She Rebel Club community of just women just saying no because it's against our instinct quite a lot of the time. And one of my little buzzwords and saying is make no your default button. Like change that instinctual wiring to make no. But we have to do that consciously when we're changing what our actual instincts are. Okay. So, it's when we have these extra things that we potentially are, hurdling over, but we also have amazing benefits as well. Intuition, I believe, is our absolute freaking superpower when we know how to tune it in and dial it up. We've heard pretty much all of our guests on She Rebel Radio dial up your own voice with Alex Bailey, listen to your gut with Claire Griffiths. And that's, another reason why I wanted to share with you today. Well, what's the difference? Because we really need to tune in with that difference between instinct and intuition. So intuition is an internal movement. It is little indications and moments of inspiration within quietness where you get that moment of clarity or genius. It's inspired, it's heart-based, it's remembered wisdom. You just know what you know without the conscious reasoning of why. It could be divine guidance, third eye stuff. It is so powerful. There is an amazing book called The Soul's Brain, which is written by an Australian author called Catherine Wilkins. And if you want to understand the logic of your intuition, I highly recommend this book. It's very deep. She talks about fractology, which is something that she has created around our intuition, and really describes intuition as pattern-based, as harmonic and vibrational. And it totally resonated with me. So I definitely recommend that you grab a copy of that book. Now, what are the different outcomes that you can expect from your intuition versus your instinct. And I'm going to illustrate this to you before we wrap up this episode. I often describe intuition as kind of following a trail that makes no sense until you look back. It makes so much sense. And that's really how my business came into creation, how I found myself doing what I'm doing now. It made no sense to me initially. When I left my job as a lawyer, I started with a dating business. I had a ready-made marketing business. And then, suddenly I seemed to find myself on top of a rooftop in Marrakesh, coaching 8 incredible women. And, I'd read certain books and worked with certain people and done certain courses that didn't make any sense to me at the time. But at that moment, I had that moment of clarity of I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful that I was bold and brave enough to dial up my intuition and follow that and dial down my instincts, in terms of investing with working with a certain person or going on a certain trip. And I do that all the time. Even now I look back and go, I wouldn't have met that person. I wouldn't have met that person. I really had to allow that trail to unfold. And often I describe that as the Hansel and Gretel trail of the white pebbles, or some of the versions of that story, it's, food and sweets to the gingerbread house. But there's no cannibalistic witch inside the house. This is your own Hansel and Gretel story of, a beautiful place of where you want to go, and your intuition can really take you there. And Steve Jobs, who, created the Apple, iPhone and Mac, was massive on intuition. He spent a lot of time in India and really became a huge fan of intuition, and also had that journey of reading certain books and courses. And I'm not comparing myself to Steve Jobs, by the way. Just realised how that came across. But it was just really interesting reading about his story in that respect, that the things that he would do that he found himself doing that seemingly had no connection to creating the most famous, followed technology in the world, which we note is based on being quite intuitive in nature. He did that by his intuition. He created that genius from his intuition, which is very different from his instincts. His instincts might have been, let's not invest in that. All the risks that come with certain things. And there's a quote from Steve Jobs: "Don't let the opinion of others drown out your own voice." There's a couple of indications with that. You need to make space to listen to your own voice with intuition. You really do. And that's how you strengthen your relationship with it. And what that highlights is that trustful relationship that you can build, which is gradual, okay? You don't have to, listen to your intuition on the massive decisions initially, but if you start to follow it on the little ones, it will make sense. But if you followed your instinct, and again, this podcast is designed for women, and I'm going to throw this out there, maybe even particularly for women. If you follow your instinct, that quote would have you listening to other people. It would have you needing to be part of the tribe that are potentially no longer a good fit for you, to fit in, to be protected, to be safe, to people please. So you would let the opinions of others drown out your own voice. And how often are we seeing that happen for women in their own businesses, also in boardrooms, in prestigious positions? Okay. So I think it's really, really relevant in terms of our instincts, which will have you running away from the big bad wolf, Little Red Riding Hood now, that doesn't exist in your cultural reality. Because our instincts are so primitive. And I think it's really important as women, we become really aware of what they are and have a conscious conversation with yourself about doing the opposite of what your instincts may tell you and dial it right down. But when it comes to your intuition, make that space to listen to the superpower that you have that will really create a trail for you to step into your genius.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced and hosted by women's advocate and coach, Lulu Mins. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find Lulu Mins on Facebook and LinkedIn at Lulu Mins and on Instagram at LuluMins_biz. Until next week, keep rebelling against the rules and designing success your way.